Judith, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am just so excited to be talking about self-esteem, self-care, and wellness. So let us know a little bit more about you.
Okay, I have been a psychotherapist for over 40 years, and now I'm a mental health coach online. And I have been also for about 40 years a speaker on workplace wellness and mental health and wellness. And I'm the author of 9 books. The last one that I wrote, which was out 2 months ago, is A Year of Self-Esteem. So very appropriate to your conference today.
Yes, very appropriate. I love that. So let us know a little bit. What's the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence?
Well, self-confidence is you're confident in yourself about doing something. It's sort of more of um, uh, an ability to have faith in yourself to do certain things and to be certain ways. Self-esteem is kind of the underlying feeling we have about our worth. So I would say self-esteem is a little deeper than self-confidence. Of course, they go hand in hand. You have good
Yes.
self-esteem, good self-confidence. However, um, the sense that we are worthy, that we are important, that we're not just taking up space, but we are valuable people, that would be self-esteem. Self-confidence is, oh, I'm confident about doing this. I'm confident about speaking in a group. People can be very confident at things that they do, but not feel good about who they are.
I thank you so much for pointing that out. That self-esteem goes a little bit deeper. What about how can we involve self-love into this equation of
Well,
self-esteem?
I think
Mhm.
self-esteem is the foundation of loving yourself. If you're critical, if you have that nagging critical voice in your head and beating yourself up for your mistakes or not being the way you want to be or needing to, wanting to lose those extra 15 pounds and upset with yourself because you had that extra cookie, you're not going to love yourself. So it's all kind of intertwined. You can't have one without the other. Self-love is basically true self-love is unconditional. It's not based on how much you weigh, what school you went to, what job you have, how much money you have, if you're married, if you have children. You're not evaluating yourself based on what you value to make yourself worthwhile. Self-love is unconditional acceptance of yourself as you are right now. Now, that doesn't mean you don't try to be better. That doesn't mean you don't try to do the best that you can. But sometimes people fail. Sometimes people are below average. And if you cannot accept yourself for some of your failures and your mistakes and your setbacks, then your self-acceptance and self-love will be way too conditional. And conditional self-love leads to conditional self-esteem. And we're never really going to be happy with ourselves unless we're more unconditional and accepting of ourselves, flaws and all.
I'm just lit up right now. You just have a way to be able to explain it that it's so profound.
Thank you.
It's the conditions that we put on our self-love, on our happiness,
Yes.
on our worthiness, and on our value. And the truth is, we are human beings, and we are going to make mistakes, and we are going to sometimes be the beginners at doing something new. And or perhaps our talents or our gifts are not like everyone else's. Right. So, what practices do you have where you help women being able to discover the unique gifts and to cultivate like their self love and their self esteem?
Well, one thing is to identify your thoughts and be a thought detective. So if you are down on yourself because, let's take that example of wanting to lose that extra 15 pounds and not feeling valuable enough until you do, or not feeling valuable enough until you find a mate, or, whatever your milestones are, write down what your thoughts are. And when you write it down, think, is this fact or is it fiction? Because let's say I'll only feel good about myself when I lose 15 pounds. Okay. Are you going to be more worthy 15 pounds lighter? No. Maybe you'll feel better. You'll feel more proud of yourself. Yeah, it's all good and everything, but your self-worth should never be dependent on that. So by being what I call a thought detective, and looking at the underlying thoughts that make us have all these, what's called cognitive distortions. Cognitive
Yep.
distortions are faulty ways of thinking that trick us into not really accepting ourselves until conditions are met. So cognitive distortions, for example, would be, I hate that I'm 15 pounds overweight. Okay. What would be a more factual, healthy thing to say, which would be, sorry, is I wish I would like to, and I'll work at it. So one is
Mm.
absolute. When people think in absolutes, or I'm a failure, I can't do anything right, it's terrible, she's terrible. When we think in overgeneralizations and black and white thinking, you're often going to have trouble. So that's a technique, is to write down what your thoughts are and then look and see, is it factual or is it exaggerated? If you say to yourself, oh, I'll never get my life together, is that factual or is it fiction? Of course it's fiction. It's stories you're telling yourself. You have to rewrite your stories based on facts versus narratives maybe other people had for you, or that you've incorporated in yourself for so many years. So that would be one example. I also like to use images. I have I used to have my clients do like a self-esteem or a self-care kit. And they would put different things in there to remind them of important lessons. And that's something you can have like on your desk or on your kitchen counter. So for instance, a bouncy ball would remind you of the importance of being resilient. And no matter how far you go down, you can go even higher up. That would be an example. Another example would be a Hershey Kiss. Hershey Kiss can remind you about the importance of kindness, not only kindness to others, but the foundation of kindness to others is kindness towards yourself. A lot of people think and have said to me, isn't it selfish when you think of yourself? And actually, that is not selfish, it's just healthy, because your relationships with others will also be healthy. So that's examples of what you can have in that self-care kit.
I love how you call it a kit. Right? It's a kit full of tools to utilize to be able to help you navigate through the sometimes unpleasant or uncomfortable emotions that prevent us from moving forward. So it's very valuable. What do you think are like the struggles and the challenges that women have to be able to slow down and connect and have that intimacy with themselves, to be able to practice those cool tips? Because I feel like a lot of us know we can go on Google and be like, okay, where are 3, 4, 5 steps that we can do? But there is a barrier from actually implementing and actually allowing space, connecting with yourself to allow yourself to go through that healing process.
I think that healing requires forgiveness. And people notoriously have a hard time for not knowing then what they know now. And the thing is, you can't turn back the clock and you can't revisit decisions and make the decisions that's already happened. And I think that if people could be more self-forgiving, that would be a big step to self-care. Because self-care isn't just taking bubble baths and lighting incense or candles and, taking a walk in nature and whatever. Oh, that's okay. But real self-care is to soothe yourself and allow yourself to be human, allow yourself to fail and fall, allow yourself to make mistakes that now you regret dearly, and still love yourself despite it, and keep on moving forward, wiser, bruised, and basically go from what I call post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic wisdom.
Forgiveness is such a it's such a powerful way of being, honestly. I know, like, with a lot of my clients that I see, forgiveness is difficult. Forgiveness of self. I just feel like forgiving other people comes a little easier to us because we understand, we have that self-compassion. We can put ourselves in those shoes. But when it comes to forgiving ourselves for, like, our past failures or, like, our mistakes, of course, it's not a failure if you learn from it, right? And so it does matter your perspective, but it's just forgiveness. Um, how would you walk someone through forgiving themselves, like
One
a process?
exercise that I really like is think and write down the things that really are hard to forgive yourself for. Things that you said, things that you did, and think about, okay, what upsets you so much and why it's so hard to forgive. And then imagine those same things that you wrote down, describe what someone you really admire says to themselves. So
Mm.
let's say, I can't believe I, raised my voice at, my daughter or whatever, and I, damaged her self-confidence or whatever, over time. And imagine a really good friend, someone that you really admire, saying the same thing. How would your perspective be different? Sometimes we just need to change perspective and get out of ourselves to have more self-compassion. And by the way, self-compassion to me is the new self-esteem. It used to be thought of that self-esteem is gained by being better than average, excelling, doing great stuff. Where does that leave half the population? If you're above average, then there's people below average. And below average people are still very worthy. And some people
I
are
love
below
that.
average in some things and
Yes,
above average in something else. So
yes.
comparisons, as Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. If you compare yourself, you will constantly find someone better, someone who's smarter, someone more accomplished, someone who has better kids or a better spouse or a better house. You're going to find something. So self-compassion is being caring to yourself without needing to be better than anybody else. So I think that taking the view that a very good friend or someone you really admire did the same exact thing and had the same things that they were saying to themselves, would you be as critical? Probably not. So I like to use this exercise when I clasp fingers like this. You want to try it? Okay.
Absolutely. Let's do
Okay.
this. Okay.
So my left thumb is on top. Now I'd like you to unentwine your hands and put it so your right thumb is on top. So entwine them a little differently. How does it feel?
I see I didn't listen.
Okay.
Okay,
Wait, they're all intertwined differently. This is my left thumb
yes,
on top, then undo it, and now my right thumb's on top. Most people say
got
it
it.
feels a little weird, it's strange, but for some people, this is a no-brainer. And most people, if I'm doing a live presentation, it's usually about 40, 60, 50, 50 roughly, that people are uncomfortable like this versus that. The same thing with folding your arms. If you go like this, to me, it's very uncomfortable, but about half the population is very comfortable with their left arm over their right arm. So it's
Mm.
really interesting to get a different perspective just with these different things that we do that can remind us the importance of thinking flexibly and thinking in ways that are taking a different view of things. Because sometimes we create a hole in ourselves or for ourselves where we look at things in the same way. And sometimes we need to develop some flexibility to, you can't change the past, you can't change things out of your control, but you can change your perception and you can change your acceptance of them.
That is a very good visual clue that we can see
Mhm.
that sometimes being uncomfortable doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, it's just a different perspective. It's a different
Exactly.
experience.
Because a lot of people think that, well, why doesn't she think more like me? And they get mad at someone for having a different perception if it's something that they feel is really important. And, by accepting, I mean, when I would have couples in my office, I often would go like, because they knew this exercise, I would often go like this and like that. And they said, oh, okay, they sort of, that was a reminder that not everybody sees the things the way you do. Some people see things more clearly in general. Some people, it takes a lot more skill building to do that.
Yeah. And a lot of what the speakers are saying today is that self love is a skill to build. And I think that is very empowering to know that even when you feel like really far away from it, or what the heck is self love? How can I do that? Oh, those things are not really for me. It's like, no, you can build it. This is something that you can build with the tools, with strategies, and being able. But it really does take time to go within and do that deep work. That's such a beautiful journey. Um, so for you, or in the chat, if you are resonating, I really loved, Judith, when you said self-compassion is like the new self-esteem.
Yep, that's very true.
Love that because that goes into unconditional self-love, which is loving and accepting yourself where you are right now, not necessarily comparison, necessarily to joy. And we see this so much now on social media, right? So many other people are getting more ahead of us. So many other people have are more fit, or have more money, or are taking luxury vacations. And so I think it really does affect our self-esteem, our self-worth. And so if you can go in, like you said, with the self-compassion, I'm definitely gonna try that now. I definitely love that. What about like some self-care? I know we have a couple of minutes left, but what does self-care look like to you?
Well, I think self-care is in a lot of different levels. We have physical self-care. Like, for instance, to me, I think exercise is really important. Find an exercise you can stick with. I had a walking group this morning. What that does for me is I walk my 10,000 steps and I have people to do it with. So I have a social environment where I have people who also like to walk. So find an exercise that's important. Your mind, keep your mind active with things that make you feel challenged. A lot of people think, oh, I don't want to cause too much stress in my life. I don't want to like be too busy. I don't want to. Well, you need enough stress to create meaning. If you don't have enough stress in your life, you're going to be like in a limp elastic band. You're not going to have any tautness. You're not going to have any spring to you. So it's just like a string instrument, like a guitar. If you tune it too much, it will snap the string. But if you don't turn the key enough, it's going to drown. So to embrace stress is to embrace self-care. To find meaning in your life is really important. And then emotional self-care. And emotional self-care is really taking care of your self-esteem, making sure your self-love is not conditional, and accepting yourself, flaws and all. And obviously there's other types of self-esteem like financial and whatever, but I would say that being purposeful in knowing what your goals are and what your priorities are and moving towards them and not expecting that I have to reach them in order for me to feel valuable. Just being on the path, I like just the idea that just one step in another direction can make all the difference. And identify what works for me. We all have different thresholds, but some are across the board, such as unconditional self-acceptance. But that does not mean we don't seek meaning and we don't try to do a lot of different things in our lives, and chase stress, if anything, because we want to actualize ourselves. We want to commit ourselves to things. So there's a lot of ways to have self-care, but making sure that your mind and body are involved in getting you to a place where you're comfortable with yourself.
Absolutely. And I really like the example that you gave where we want to be able to fine tune that like balance between the self acceptance, but then also giving ourselves that little push to be able to face our fears and get out of our comfort zone so we can evolve and grow.
Right.
So it's wonderful. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us today?
I don't have anything on the top of my mind. I think that we covered a lot just in 25 minutes. That's very good.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, I know that you do have a free gift to offer. So please let us know a little bit more about that.
I have done a personal development 101 ebook, and I am giving that away for my free gift. And what it does, my subject of my books is practical life skills, how to be a stress manager and not a stress carrier, how to manage your anger, how to communicate more effectively. So I have kind of the upshots of different areas of life skills, emotionally healthy life skills in this book. And it's a 48-page ebook. And so that will be my gift. But for other free resources, you can go on belmontwellness.com. And I have self-tests such as self-forgiveness test, what's your emotional wellness IQ. I have all these different free things on there, plus obviously the books that I have written.
Lovely. Those are all great resources. And I know you're very knowledgeable and expertise and having 40 years in the mental health. I mean, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, I have 10, but but
Well, I'm a lot
40.
older than you are.
But a
Actually,
lot
if I'm really
wiser.
thinking about it, it's 45.
Oh, 45. That's
Over
not too
40,
bad.
but 45.
Well, thank you so much for your time and being really generous with us today and sharing your expertise with the women in the audience. I know that they are going home with practical tools and tips so that they can incorporate more self-love, self-care, and self-esteem. So thank you so much.
Thank
It
you.
was an honor.
Thank you.